my channel today. Today I will be talking about the dynamic ordinary least squares and also the fully modified ordinary least squares. In this regard, I am just going to use a time series data which I've imported into EViews, and I'm using the student version. With the student version, as I mentioned in my previous video, there are a lot of restriction. As once you estimate it, you cannot just copy it unless it's paid. So usually I'll just use this one to estimate the model for you to see how it works. Now, people use the fully modified for endogeneity. To factor in endogeneity. So with the fully modified, even if the sample size is not really huge, you can still use it. But ordinary least squares, dynamic ordinary least squares, if you use that one, sometimes the coefficients, some of the coefficients of the independent variables lose their power and then they become statistically insignificant. So I will just start by selecting the variables I'm going to use. Here I have FDI, which is in percentage, annual growth rate, gross capital formation. In here it's in percentage of GDP. Then here I have GDP growth rate, and also in here I'm not going to, this is GDP per capita growth rate, and this is general government consumption expenditure, final consumption expenditure, but I'm not going to use it. Inflation is here. This is the interaction between inflation and trade openness. So this is also this is an interaction between inflation and I think trade openness, and also this one is also trade openness and inflation. So usually I'm going to use the variables on at the levels without any interrupted variable. So I'll first select GDP, which is going to be my main dependent variable. I will select FDI, select gross capital formation, select inflation, select trade openness. Then I will just click here, right click to open as equation. So I've opened as equation. Now I'll go here. When you click on the drop down, I will just go here. You can see co-integration regression here, and in here I have the option to choose. Here you have different model, dynamic, so I'm going to be focusing on the dynamic here, dynamic and then fully modified, and I'll click this one, then click on OK. I'm not going to change the option here. I'll just leave it the way it is. I'll click on OK, then click on OK here. So the model has been estimated, and as you can see here, we have FDI, which is the p-value, which is statistically insignificant, so it doesn't have any effect on GDP growth rate. So we also have gross capital formation, a proxy for domestic investment, which is positive, and then statistically significant, which indicate that it has a positive influence on GDP expansion. We have inflation, which has a negative effect on GDP. So here it's negative, and you can see significance around 5%. We have trade openness, which is positive and significant here. So it shows that it increases GDP. So now, once this is estimated, I will just click on freeze to make sure this is here. Now, like I mentioned, if you use the dynamic, sometimes some of the variables lose their coefficients, lose their power, and they become insignificant. So in here, we are going to change the model to dynamic. So I'll click on OK, and look here, you can see still the p-value for FDI increases, then the coefficients reduce. So you can see the p-value here is now around 90% for some 0.9, and here you can see it's around 40, and we will say you can see here the p-value increased, and then you can see here the coefficient for gross capital formation increased, and as you can see here, it's bigger than the one in the fully modified. you can see inflation is significant, and you can see here that gross capital formation p value becomes a little bit higher. So around, let's say, around 5%, but people say this is 3%. But let me say, because we are using the conventional, p value, which is 5%. So inflation is negative, and as you can see here, it increased, and then you can see that trade openness becomes statistically insignificant as compared to the one in at the fully modified. So sometimes when you use these models against each other or as a robustness checks, um, some in the dynamic, some of the variables or the coefficients lose their power, the significance, power. So obviously, if your data is not really huge, just mostly use the fully modified ordinary least squares. And in here, people can also do checks here. You can do your check here to, to try to check the variance inflation factor. And also you can see here, as you can see here, there is no, if you're looking at the centered here, there is nothing like cardinality among the variable here. So you can see the highest is around 9. It's 9. So here, and also basically that is what we use to to check for use to check for the variance inflation factor here. And also you can run for the variance coefficient variance decomposition, as you can see here. So this is also part of it, but the main focus is to be on the fully modified and the dynamic ordinary least squares. Thank you.